out, it's only been a few weeks. And by the way, we'll go like 40 to an hour. We'll see where it goes.
Wait, I'm marking things by accident. Sorry.
No, you're good. Elevation Nation. Wow. This is great. Sam and I haven't recorded a podcast in a few weeks, so it's great to be back where we belong. We have an amazing conversation for you all today, tonight, this morning, whenever you're listening to it. We have Marissa Robinson, who is a former guest. She was episode 111, the special 111, where we talked all about mental health. And then we have Maddie Weinfeld, who is new to Elevation Nation. But Marissa and Maddie work together as psychotherapists at Be You Psychotherapy. So we're going to talk all about psychotherapy, what it is. We're going to talk, I'm sure, a lot about mental health for young adults, what it means to go to therapy, the importance of therapy, some topics that we covered in Marissa's episode. But Sam and I got new topics that we want to cover today. Girls, welcome to Elevation Nation.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Yes,
welcome back, Marissa. Welcome, Maddie. We're so excited to have you both join us. And I don't think there's any topic that we can have more podcasts on that's more important than mental health and some of the struggles that young people are going through. I'm very grateful that I think in the past few years, talking about mental health and the realities that a lot of people are facing has become more mainstream. But I do think there's a lot of stigmas and stereotypes around it still. And one of the goals that Parker and I have with Elevation Nation I will stereotype here for a second, for our male audience that are maybe a little bit more hesitant to talking about their emotions, introspection, or therapy, we're trying to unlock that and unblock that fear for them, and our female audience too that might be a little bit worried about talking to a therapist. So we're really excited to get into it with you both and appreciate you giving us the time. So let's get into it. Marissa, you already did this once, but we're going to make you do it again. This is Elevation Nation. You have to give us an elevator pitch and tell us who you are. So, Maddie, you are new. Let's start with you. Let's get a little background. Who are you?
Okay. Hi, my name is Maddie. I am a psychotherapist and the founder of our practice, Be You Psychotherapy. I'm super excited to have Marissa part of the group now, too. A little bit about me. I went to Cornell University for college, studied human development there, and then went to grad school at NYU's Silver School of Social Work. And I've always kind of had this vision of getting into private practice work. I've always felt that I wanted to be a therapist and knew somehow, some way I would get there. And I'm very grateful that my path has led me to now be able to have my own private practice. Be You Psychotherapy has been open since January, so I guess we're coming up on the year anniversary of that. So it's been awesome so far, and I'm super excited to be here and talk to you about that experience. And like you said, more about mental health and breaking down more of that stigma around therapy and talking about it.
Beautiful. That was a great elevator pitch. We are delighted that you're here with us, Maddie. And Marissa, we want to hear yours as well. And again, you know what? I'm actually going to take a pause on the elevator pitch. You can do it in a second, Marissa, because I want to enlighten Elevation Nation with how we all met, because I think that story is hilarious. So more former guests of Elevation Nation, our friends from Stack Mat, we'll link to that in this episode. We're like, we have a friend. Her name's Maddie. She'll be perfect for the podcast. And so we're always looking for new guests. I hop on a call with Maddie. Maddie's telling me about this practice that she's starting and psychotherapy. And I'm like, we always want to talk to more therapists. Let's do it. And she's like, okay, can I bring on this person as well, one of my other therapists that is in my practice with me? I'm like, of course, the more the merrier. And so Maddie's like, okay, I'll put us in a group chat. And it's Marissa. I was like, there's absolutely no way, how serendipitous that we all got connected and can run this back again. So it all comes full circle. And we're so glad when friends become friends again. So Marissa, now that we got that story out of the way, let's refresh Elevation Nation. Who are you?
I'm Marissa Robinson. I do think that story is just hilarious. And I think it just shows the power of like networking and shows the power of like talking to people. And I think that is how I met Maddie, was I was looking for a job, and I'll go back in a minute, but I was looking for a job and looking for a smaller private practice at the time. And I used my network to reach out to Maddie, and it just shows the beauty of like networking and really leaning on your support system to find and advance in whatever path you're wanting to take. But to go back, I'm Marissa. I'm a psychotherapist at Be You Psychotherapy. I recently joined the practice. I'm so excited about it. I started at University of Maryland with Sam and Parker, or at Panitch and Parker. I don't call him Sam. Loved University of Maryland. I was a major in family science and a human development minor. I always knew, similar to Maddie, that I wanted to be a therapist. Since I was young, I just had that feeling, and I kind of dedicated all of my like middle school, high school, college experience and internships to mental health and working with other people. And then I went on to graduate school at Johns Hopkins University for clinical mental health counseling. And then from there, I worked at an addictions unit in Baltimore, Maryland. Then I moved to New York during COVID and worked at a larger practice. What a great time to move to New York City in COVID. And now I am with Maddie at Be You Psychotherapy, and I just couldn't be happier working with Maddie.
Amazing. Sam, you're saying it's all serendipitous. Like, how about me, man? I grew up with Marissa. Maddie I went to camp with. And then you hop on a call with Maddie, and you're like, oh, this is some random person, I guess, that Taylor and Millie, like, connect you with. I know both of them for, like, a long, long time. It's just hilarious. And, like, it's funny how the world works. And I think it's pretty freaking cool that we're now back all together having another conversation on Elevation Nation about what's going on in the real world. But before we get to what's going on in the real world in 2022, Maddie, I got a question for you. Like, you said that you always were going to go down this path to be a therapist, work in, helping people essentially. I take it when you were younger, you were always helping your friends out with their problems or with whatever they were trying to go through. You were trying to coach them, get them to a better place.
Yes, as many therapists, I think, say in telling their story, felt kind of like that unofficial therapist for many friends throughout my entire life. And it's something that I think I really took for granted for a while. It was just the way that I was, and I was happy to do it. And I think with time learned that I wasn't bad at doing it. So the, kind of natural progression of that, and then figuring out that there might be a way to turn that like innate interest and want to help people into a professional one, was a really cool realization that I could do this not just for my friends and family, but for other people too.
And Marissa, I take it similar as well.
Yes, definitely. I was also always the unofficial therapist. I also feel like, my unique experiences growing up in my family and the different dynamics going on there has led me to be a therapist as well. I was just always the one, to rely on. And I had to go through certain experiences in my life where I think it pushed me forward to this path. And then it kind of just all came together into a career. So yeah, with Maddie on that.
All right, I got another story, per usual. So I went to school with Marissa, obviously, so did Parker. And I vividly remember sitting with Marissa and some of our other friends, like late at night on a random school night, sitting on the bench that was outside of our fraternity house and talking until probably 2 a.m. about like life and going into adulthood and the fears that we had. And Marissa was such a good listener and made us all feel better. And so I think it is interesting, right? Parker asked this question, and like, I am a consultant now. No, I was not consulting as a kid. Like, I didn't have those skill sets. It's not something that was inherent in me. But for therapists, I think that they have this like nurturing ability. And of course, you guys learned a ton of new techniques and things in school. But I do think there's a little bit within you both that's probably like that listener, that nurturer, that healer ability that you've kind of been born with. And I find that fascinating. And honestly, I am jealous that you both found a profession and a calling that is so closely tied to who you are at your core. And hopefully Parker and I will get there one day. We'll see. We're working on it. We like talking, so I guess that's why we have the podcast.
Dude, you love to talk, man. You're sitting here, you're like, nothing else matters in the entire world. Come on. You know you feel that way.
It's true. It's very true.
It's interesting that you use the word calling. I recently read something about whether therapy is a job or a calling. And the article kind of said it's a mix of both. And I think that it is a little bit of both. And the way that both Marissa and I described that, it's something that was kind of natural to get to. It certainly is something that I feel grateful for, that it did come together and that doing it as a job has proven to be as wonderful as I hoped it would be.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And kind of on top of that, I think that calling is also like a grounded intuition that I think a lot of young people, you know, would hope to find. And I think with therapists, maybe we find it a little bit easier because it's a tool that we use in the therapy room each and every day. It's like we have to be grounded. We have to be, you know, really leaning into our inner self so that we can be present with our clients and show up for them. And I don't think that's just specific to therapy. I think it can be with other different, with other careers as well, as just really taking the time to lean into yourself and connect to that authentic intuition or authentic self that you have, and, you know, really be real with yourself and ask, you know, what your skill sets are, who you are, what you want, what do you find fulfilling in your life. So I think, you know, I think it is very important for therapists to connect with that. I also think it could also apply to other, you know, careers as well.
You said be real there, Marissa. You should have said be you.
Be real.
That's okay. So I want to get into it. Exactly. Yeah, Be Real, the app. Yeah. I was trying to give you a shameless plug for the company, but that's fine. We can do both.
Be you too.
Be you too. Exactly. All right. So I want to get into some of the nitty gritty, right? We have a lot of listeners out there in Elevation Nation who are like, Sam, Parker, I'm going through this. Like, I want to hear Maddie and Marissa talk to me, right? Maybe I'm scared to take that leap into therapy. Maybe I don't really know what it entails, but I need someone to listen. And it might not be live right now, but Maddie and Marissa, I can promise you that there are elevators out there who need to hear your voice and need to hear some of the struggles that some of your clients are going through so that they don't feel alone. So I'd love, Maddie, if you could start us off. Obviously, we don't want to break any HIPAA laws, but what are some of the struggles that you think young people are going through today, right? We're breaking through, hopefully, knock on wood, a pandemic. We're at a very weird time where a lot of young people maybe haven't even been in an office or had to graduate school without seeing their friends for the last couple of years. What are some of the struggles that you think young people are facing? And then how are you helping them face those challenges?
Yeah, certainly can answer that, I think, without compromising any HIPAA rules. I think one of the overarching kind of like catchphrases on our website, and that Marissa and I have talked about being one of our general areas of focus that kind of summarizes all of it, is life transitions. And so obviously that's super vague, but I feel like it's a term that, again, kind of encompasses a lot of what especially we tend to work with young adults. And you ask, you know, what are young adults going through, is some sort of life transition. So on the large scale coming out of COVID, you just listed so many transitions, right? Into a new city, into a new job, into in-person working. Even before COVID, there were tons of life transitions, whether it be graduating college or even starting college, starting a new job, starting a new relationship, ending a relationship. And so essentially with that, I think that therapy can provide a really awesome, safe space for people to navigate the anxieties that often coincide with moving from one part of life into another one. And so on this grander scale, we could talk about some of the universal transitions that everybody tends to go through. And then there's obviously each unique individual experience of those transitions. But I think here we try to create space where people are able to, just be heard and validated that it is scary sometimes to make a change, whether you choose that change or that change happens to you. And to also recognize that you could be both excited and nervous at the same time. I often use that that life transitions can be the most wonderful and scariest thing all at the same time.
So I feel like as a young adult, like I look back at my life before I graduated college and like, as you know, from zero, you know, just being born to 22 years old, I feel like in my life, you know, from what I went through, there were a lot of transitions, you know, whether it's a transition from first grade to second grade to third grade, you know, you're starting a new sport, you're learning a new activity, you're learning a new skill. I feel like as you're a child, there's so many different transitions, and you get to high school. That's another transition, you know, going from ninth grade to 10th grade. That's another big transition. And then, you know, ending for me, an example, I stopped going to camp, did an internship, you know, then you go to college. Then it just continuous transitions all the time. And I've always thought of it like, wow, you graduate college and there's this big transition, like this massive transition where you're going into a place that you've never experienced for your entire life. Sam and I like to say that, you know, your entire life up until college or high school, whatever your circumstance is that you have, you know, a GPS, people to guide you, you know, along the way, you know, whether that's your parents, a mentor, a friend, a teacher, someone to help you along the way. And then for a lot of people, when they graduate college, the GPS pretty much ends. It's like, what happens now? What's supposed to route you? How are you supposed to navigate these things? And bringing it back to transitions, it's like, I think now it's like there's just this big life transition that just happens. And what's really challenging is that I feel like as a young adult, you feel like you're prepared until you realize you're not.
And I also think that the difference as you get to that post-college place is that, like you said, and while of course people have varied experiences, for the most part, you're following a roadmap. And then you graduate college and all of a sudden people's lives veer in so many different directions. So you can anticipate that junior year of high school is going to be really stressful gearing up to college applications, right? That's what everyone says and you're ready for it. But then you graduate college and some people are going to grad school and some people have their dream job and some people don't have a job. And all of a sudden people's lives, of course, take, I think, a more varied route. And I think that, like you said, it's kind of like this big unknown. And then also it can be a breeding ground for so much comparison of like what you think you're supposed to be doing, what you should be doing, because no longer is everyone following the same or similar trajectory.
I've struggled greatly with comparing myself to others around me, right? And I think
you just want my athletic ability. That's what it is.
No,
right?
Parker, your cute cross-eyed baby pictures is what I actually am jealous and
You mean my eye patch?
Yeah,
I wore an eye patch for a
Maddie
year.
Parker he had an eye patch as a little kid, and I'll send you pictures. There,
I think I have a picture of that.
Yes, maybe we'll put it on the Elevation Nation website when
Might
Parker's
have
not
to.
looking, because I run the website. Yes.
Oh,
besides being jealous, of your eye patch, Parker, I think it's only natural to compare ourselves to others, and especially, when there's a lot of societal pressures placed upon us. And I'm not just talking about a job, right? I'm talking about having the American dream, right? I didn't read this article, but I heard this headline from someone that we may be the first generation of people, of kids who make less money and are less successful than their parents. Essentially, pretty much stereotypically over the past generations, wealth has accumulated and grown. Families have gotten land and better jobs and more education. And our generation is slated to be the first generation that honestly has more debt and less success than their parents' generation. And so the trajectory that we think we are supposed to have is a little bit skewed, I think, than what we maybe should be happy with. And that's something I've struggled with a fair amount. So even when it comes to career, and probably more relevant to me, relationships right now is something that I'm trying to navigate is, well, my grandma told me that, I need to hurry up and find someone, or my parents were married by X amount of years, or all my friends are getting engaged, or Parker just moved in with his girlfriend. And I feel that pressure. I feel that pressure every day. And it's something I'm trying to navigate and figure out how I can stop comparing myself to others on their journey. But I don't think it's as simple as, Sam, stop comparing yourself to others, right? We know that you sometimes can't control the thoughts in your head and the emotions that you have running. So Marissa and Maddie, take us a step further, right? And this is what I work with my therapist on is, I hear what you are saying. I know that is the right thing to do, but how do I rewire my brain to get there?
I think, when I think about comparing, my mind goes straight to anxiety, right? We're fearing that we're not going to be on the right path. We're fearing that we're going to be left behind. We have all these different fears that are stemming from X, Y, and Z things, depending on your personal history. And Panitch, I think you just said it beautifully. That causes a lot of thoughts in our head. That makes us fixated. That makes us overthink on these things. And all of a sudden we're like, so far out there, and while we're just going down that spiral, it's leading us further away from our authentic self through what we actually want, right? Maybe you don't want to move in with your girlfriend right now, and maybe that's totally okay. And we're just feeling that way because we're comparing. But we wouldn't know that because we're so far out into this comparison land rather than within ourselves. So how do we, cope with anxiety? I believe that we, need to ground. And my favorite grounding, and I have like 2 DBT skills that are like my go-to things. Maddie is the skills queen, but these are my 2 go-to things, is, stop skills and tip skills. So when you're noticing, your anxiety is going so far away out, stop skills kind of is like S, take a stop, right? T, take a step back. O is observe. So like I take a step back and I literally just like look around my room, and I breathe in through my nose. I exhale out through my mouth, and just look around our room to like ground into like your space, right? You're not in that other person's space. You're in your space, in your room with your own experiences. And then you look internally. So you observe externally, you observe internally, and then you notice, okay, I'm feeling sad, actually. I'm feeling sad that I'm not where that other person is. That's okay. You're allowed to feel your emotions regarding where the other person is. But that doesn't mean that you have to be where, or you should be where that other person is. You feel sad and I'm here, right? Or I'm angry and I'm here. I like that what Maddie said earlier, using the and. I am feeling X, Y, and Z, and, I'm going to do this about it. I'm going to do a career change if I really am feeling sad that I'm not in that career or whatever it might be. And then the P in stop skills is to proceed mindfully. And then tip skills is, I can go into that a little bit later, but I'm curious, Maddie, how do you use stop skills often when thinking about grounding?
Yeah. And I think that as you just explained it in terms of the, question, what do you do to stop comparing? Because it's obviously not as simple as that. The steps Marissa just described are a way to help people slow down and really get back in touch with what's going on with them. And then that proceed mindfully, I feel like, is often the follow-up question, right? Okay, great. I'm here in the here and now, but I still don't know how to get where I want to go. And the part of working towards an ability to like slow down and ground yourself, I think also then builds a foundation of trust in yourself that you'll be able to figure out where you want to go, right? It's okay not to know exactly what the next step's going to be or where you want to go, but by exploring the feelings coming up for you. And like Marissa said, it's okay to feel sad. It's even okay to feel envious. Sometimes that helps direct you to what you want. And then we can try to understand, why do you want that? Is that actually going to provide you with what it is that you think it's going to? And then to set intentional goals, but not just because it looks nice that somebody else has that thing, really because through these conversations, we come to understand if that's a true goal for you, why that is, and then how best to pursue it.
I love that. I keep like having this idea that comes in my head. It's like we live in a time in 2022 where mental health is talked about probably more than it ever has been, at least in American society, where it's brought to light more in our jobs. Our employers are pushing it. You hear about it on the news. You hear about the bad things about it on the news, but there's more resources, I feel like, now than there has been ever before. But what's also really interesting, and this is the piece where that kind of is like, this is weird, is that we also live in a time where instant gratification is more accessible at any point in the day. And I say that because instant gratification allows us to suppress those thoughts, Marissa, that you were talking about, where you're sitting in a room and you have anxiety, and instead of sitting and taking a step back and looking around and observing the room and how you feel, a lot of times people just go right to their phone and watch a TikTok to make them happy, or, you know, go do whatever it might be to just get that quick hit of dopamine. And that is the thing that's really challenging, is that we have more resources than ever before, but then also we have other resources that I think a lot of people are just going direct to because it's easy. And it's like that. It's just like an interesting thought that I have. It's a challenge as a young adult, especially because there are a lot of easy, accessible things right in front of us that can help, that aren't the hard things. So I think taking a step back and thinking, wow, I'm sad right now, that's hard. And maybe we don't want to accept that. Whew, I don't know. What do you guys think on that?
Parker, you're a genius. You just beautifully described defenses and what they do to protect us from our emotions. I think you're completely right in what you said. I think that anxiety comes from this distraction, and that we're constantly distracting ourselves from how we're actually feeling. And then it starts bottling up, and all of a sudden we're like so anxious, spiraling, and then we keep distracting ourselves, but we're never really taking a step back and sitting with ourselves and really taking time to feel our emotions and connect with our authentic self and notice how we actually feel about something, not how the influencers on an Instagram page feels about it, or not how the TikToker therapists, feel about it, how we feel about it. And so yes, you are completely right. And that is why we sometimes spiral out in anxiety.
But is it sometimes hard, where I feel like, maybe I'm talking for me, maybe I'm talking about something else where I've seen someone that's but also, am I allowed to feel that? That's another thing, is for example, I'm at work and I, am in a meeting or whatever, and a presentation goes terribly. And when I was supposed to kill it and be the guy to deliver and whatnot, and then I go, and my team obviously sees it, and then the vulnerability comes out, I look defeated, and it sets that thing. It almost is wow, am I allowed to feel that way? And we create all these expectations here and there in society that it's just it's sometimes very challenging.
I want to add to that, Parker, the concept of, are you allowed to feel this way? Because I think, again, I'm speaking from the male perspective here, but I'd love to hear from the female perspective as well, that we have these societal times when we can be emotional and when we can't. And I'll tell another story. Freshman year, I was playing football, and the biggest kid on our team tackled and fell on the smallest kid on our team. And this kid got absolutely crushed. And the kid got up. He wasn't hurt, but he started crying. And our football coach went over to him and he said, "What are you doing? You can only cry if someone in your family dies, your dog runs away, or your girlfriend breaks up with you." He said those three things, and it vividly stuck in my head. Not because I was the one crying. There's no other reason besides I was standing there. He was a male figure, a macho, jacked football coach who I looked up to at a formidable, malleable age of a freshman in high school, and I heard him say that to the smallest kid on our team, and I said, those are the only times I'm going to cry. Or I thought those were the only times that I should cry. And so we have these societal concepts of emotion for men in our heads, whether we even realize it or not. That coach wasn't even talking to me. Yet that is so ingrained in how I think. And granted, I think I've broken through that. I definitely cry way more than that. But it stuck with me. And I think for a lot of young people, they have some similar moment to that. And so they bury it up and they push it down. And I'm not just talking about men. I think women too struggle with sharing those emotions, or don't want to come off as too emotional, or having problems or anxiety or issues because they don't want to be seen having baggage, right? Everyone has this different societal expectation bestowed upon them of how they should be managing their emotions. And I am no therapist, but I say that if you aren't confident enough to share your emotions with other people, just at least start to get confident enough to share them with yourself. Whether that's starting by locking yourself in a room and being emotional alone and then working it out with someone, I think you have to first let those emotions flow before you can even get the confidence to talk to a therapist or talk to a family member or a friend about those emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could imagine how impactful those words were from your coach. And I think what you're describing is what we call in therapy world like core beliefs that everyone holds about themselves and the world they live in, how they're supposed to exist in it. And stereotypically, like you said, for men especially, there's this core belief: I shouldn't cry or I shouldn't be overly emotional. But essentially, we all have these scripts and these narratives that we believe to be true, and they're influenced by life experiences or things important people, family members, coaches, friends have said, media has said, TV shows, movies, etc. And so part of that work that you describe of just sitting with yourself, and I think often that gets revealed in therapy, is getting to uncover what are these beliefs that kind of guide your experience. And then that's the first step, identifying it, to then maybe rewriting it. And so you said now you cry far more often. It sounds like you've been able to not only identify that belief, but to challenge it. And I think that there are so many reasons why we have the beliefs we have, and then we hold them as true if they don't go challenged. And that can be really risky.
Do you guys have any like scientific facts about crying? I'm actually really curious. Anything?
Do you, Marissa?
It's so random, like off the dome. Do you guys have any facts about crying?
I don't know, like, or just
not researchers.
We don't need to look up like, talk about data or anything, but like crying. Let's talk about crying and like how that helps release stress or
One thing I'll say about crying, and it's definitely not a scientific fact, but something that I think is super cool about crying is it's one of, if not the only real mind-body connections that like happens in such a clear way, right? Like we feel something inside and then tears literally come out of us. It's something that I've talked with a lot of clients about. It's something that people tend to be super resistant to, at least at first, but come to really appreciate the fact that our bodies allow us to physically release emotional weight, heaviness, sadness, anger, anxiety, whatever it might be. So again, I don't know the science of exactly like how that works, but I think it's a really unique, cool thing that our body does that like syncs up with what's going on internally.
100%. I mean, it's literally a release. And I think that's why, somatic therapy is so important. And kind of going back to our stop skills that I spoke about earlier, the ability to identify your physical sensations in your body is so important because it's telling you how you actually feel. Your emotions are your messengers through your authentic self. So if I'm feeling, like Maddie said, this weight, this heaviness, and I don't know what it is, I could be lugging it around for days, for months. And then that's where, once again, other mental health issues stem from. But if we know, okay, heaviness, I feel safe leaning into this heaviness. I can, ask it what it's saying. I can really be curious about what this heaviness, why this heaviness is here. Maybe tears will come up. And then maybe I feel safe in my tears. And then maybe I'm able to release that heaviness and feel a little bit lighter. You can feel new. That's where growth happens. When we feel lighter and we can really feel calm and connected and curious, that is how we grow and transform. So once again, not your scientific facts, but I think as therapists and theory-wise, that is what I believe holds true and what I see in my clients.
It's funny. I'm a movie crier, but I don't cry often, like when I'm not watching a movie, unless something has really been powerful. But you can really get like a powerful story through a movie and just like, shed a tear a little bit. Like that hit me hard. I'm curious, what is like a topic besides work that has been coming up in a lot of the conversations that you guys are having with your clients?
Yeah, so work is certainly a big one. I think another common topic is relationships, dating and relationships. And kind of like with that would be different types of intimacy and sex. So, I mean, I kind of just threw out a lot of topics, but I think they all fall under the same umbrella. So, yeah, dealing with things from dating to long-term relationships or marriage and everything in between.
I'm smiling because those are definitely what I talk to my therapist about. It's like Parker and I, when we first started Elevation Nation, we were thinking through some of the different like buckets of your life. And I am under a false sense that like I have my work bucket pretty figured out. I like what I do. That's good. My family bucket, it's all good. My routine, my health, my fitness, like that's all good. But I'm missing the relationship bucket. And I'm trying so hard to like fill that bucket because I think that's like the last piece before I like reach super happiness level. And that's not necessarily how it works. And so I don't know. I've seen like couples who pretend to be happy, who aren't happy, couples who have gotten married. And the most exciting part of their day is determining how many times they're going to go to Home Depot. And so like you have to put all these things in perspective of what life you want to live and where you're headed. And it's hard, again, going back to that piece of comparison, right? Comparison is unfortunately so natural for many of us, but sometimes by stepping back and just facing the emotions that you're feeling, you personally, you can hopefully better hone in on what you actually truly want. And so I think it's important. I wanted to ask you guys, though, something that's a little bit bigger and broader. Two therapists who have seen the power of your work, and Parker's gone to therapy, I go to therapy. I'm a huge proponent of it. And so we're going to get a little sad here for a second, but I'm from Chicago. There was a shooting where my grandma's from in Highland Park, Illinois this summer on 4th of July. I was just back there for Rosh Hashanah. It was very hard driving through the town. And it got me thinking about a topic that I wanted to ask you both when we were here, which is, you know, not scientifically proven yet, but I think we can all assume that the young man who did these terrible acts had some sort of mental illness or mental problems, right? And we've seen this time and time again with many of the violence in our young people, anxiety, suicide, depression, shootings, threats of terrorism, whatever it may be. They all seem to stem back to some sort of mental illness or not having enough attention. And so my questions to you both are a little bit twofold. Can some of those be prevented in your mind with therapy and tools, or are a lot of these things like born with mental illnesses that will come up eventually? Does that make sense what I'm asking? And there might not be an answer. It's just something that I kind of, when it hit really close to home, I started to think about, like, could we have stopped this at all? Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously such an important question to consider. And I think there are two things I want to say on it. One is, obviously, there seems to be a clear link between perpetrators of this sort of violence and mental health. But I will say, to go back to our very beginning of the conversation around like stigma with mental health, is some of the risks of kind of like writing off the explanation of these things as like, oh, this person struggled with their mental health, because that alone is not an explanation. Because, I mean, we talk to people all day who are struggling with their mental health, and most people are in one way or another at some point in their lives. And obviously, most people wouldn't do these things. And so I do think it's important to acknowledge that it's a contributing factor, maybe even an explaining factor, and that there's some risk, I think, with like just writing it off or explaining it that way that can contribute to some of the shame around mental health. Because if we just link that up with people who shoot, then people are going to feel less comfortable owning that it's something they struggle with too.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more, Maddie. I kind of attributing to that point too, you know, I don't know if we could or couldn't have stopped it. I don't know. What I can say is that going back to the stigma around mental health and going back to the shame that we hold, I think, and saying, you know, to many people, you know, you can't cry over this, you can't cry over that, or you have to be in a certain way, or you should be in a certain way. Well, that is going to create mental health issues. once again, I can't speak to, and I won't speak to, this particular person or to, shooters in general. I'm not here to generalize. But I think with mental health issues at large, a lot of it is because of our society and how we don't talk about our emotions and how we don't allow safe spaces to process our feelings and to live authentically. I think that there is a clear line between like people who are bullied and mental health issues as well in school, and how if we just perpetuate being bullied and then not being able to talk about it and feeling like it's our fault and feeling like we're not good enough or bad, and the cycle perpetuates, of course we're not going to feel okay, right? We're just not going to feel good. So I think a lot of it is societal, and I think that we need to change how we view mental health in general, or else, behaviors, emotions, and mental health issues will continue to keep being perpetuated.
Yeah, and I think to back off of that, I would like to believe that in a world that really created more safe spaces for everyone to be as they are and feel as they are, that there would be other safer, healthier outlets for people who are struggling. Would we be rid of all crime? I don't know exactly how that would all go, but for sure, I think it could only help the problem.
Definitely.
I know I came out swinging there very heavy, so I apologize for that, but I was curious from your guys' perspectives, talking about mental health to your point, Maddie, right? Like some of the young people who are going through normal everyday life. I don't obviously want to compare what some of these crazy, horrible people are going through, but I think there are ties between mental health and how we can hopefully at some point start to work on our mental health at an earlier age for everyone. And kind of where I was going with this was something that Marissa and Parker and I had worked on at one point, trying to come up with a charity or a non-for-profit that we could help with in getting mental health resources to young people. And it's my hope, I'm optimistic that mental health and the skills that you learn in therapy will be taught in grade school, just like the ABCs in math. And I don't know if there's any initiatives that are pushing to get that out there, but I'm sure at one point they didn't teach music and I learned how to play the recorder. And I think it's more important that I learn about mental health and coping mechanisms and how to talk about my emotions, no offense to my music teacher, than playing the recorder. So I hope one day we can get to that point where it's taught in public and private schools and no one bats an eye. It would be interesting to learn more about if that's happening.
I feel like I read somewhere, had a conversation that, like, for example, like meditation is happening within like elementary schools, and teachers are starting to implement a meditation with, for younger kids to take a 5-minute break, push everything away. Am I wrong on that? Have you guys heard that before?
No, you're right. Shout out to Julie Friedman. She told me about belly breathing.
All right, cool. But
yeah, and I think that's huge.
Totally. I mean, meditation. I mean, Sam, I'll never forget. Barcelona, we're abroad. Sam pulls out his phone. He's like, dude, I found this app. It's called Headspace. We should do this. I'm like, what is it? He's like, they just talk to you and tell you how to breathe. I'm like, cool. And then like 15 minutes later, he was like, all right, that's it. We can go on with our day. And honestly, I meditate almost every day since, which is pretty funny. But my meditation has changed. And people think if you're not in meditation that it's one way. It's like the kumbaya, legs crossed type of thing. No, there's so many different techniques, ways to meditate. And I think it's really what works for you. There's like no right or wrong way to do it.
100%. My favorite thing that I learned, I cannot sit still. It's very hard for me to sit still. And in graduate school, we were taught that like doing the same repetitive motion for 7 minutes gets you into a meditative state. And so I'm a big runner. I love running, and I don't love running, because, it's good for me. I love it because of my mental health. And once I start, and it really is true. Once you really get into it, 7 minutes, I'm connecting with myself. I'm noticing how I feel. I'm noticing how my body is running. I'm starting to think about, what I'm grateful for. I'm having if I'm running outside, I'm hearing the birds, I'm hearing the water. I'm just really present into the run. And so it's 100, and that's the opposite of sitting still in a room for 30 minutes, but that's my version of meditation.
It's so true.
And even doing the dishes, right? Like petting your dog. 7 minutes. If you just keep on doing that repetitive motion, you'll get to that meditative state and start being extremely present and aware of how you're feeling and your surroundings. And that's meditation. It's focus time, focus inward time.
It's not really thinking about anything sometime.
Well, Parker, you left out a really big part of this story and then let Marissa say a beautiful piece and made me look dumb. So I'm going to bring it back. When I asked Parker to meditate using Headspace on the beach, I got made fun of. And then we went to Iceland and I sat on a glacier and I got out my phone and I meditated and everyone made fun of me. And I got a cool picture and I meditated on a glacier and you didn't, Parker.
All right. Let me break down the story for Maddie and Marissa and Elevation Nation. We're sitting in Iceland. This beautiful glacier, right, is in front of us. It's cold. It's one of the most beautiful sights you'll ever see in your entire life. And you're looking at this glacier. It's massive, like a mountain. And Sam, there it is. Like literally Sam is sitting on this rock, right? And Sam's like, I need my space. And I'm with three of our friends. And Sam's like, I need my space. I'm sure he put on like some song or whatever, his meditation guidance or whatnot. So we leave Sam. Me and two other friends, we walk to like this other side of the mountain and we start climbing it, kicking boulders like down the mountain. And they're tumbling. Like we're just going to watch them tumble and then slam into the iceberg or whatever, the glacier. And we did it for like a good 30 minutes and we get back. And Sam's happy as could be. He's like, guys, I was so focused. This was just an amazing moment in my life. I could hear the glacier cracking and the sounds. It was just amazing. And we just lost our minds. Like, dude, you didn't hear shit. We were throwing these massive rocks that made huge noises. But I will say that picture is pretty cool.
I thought I meditated to the point where I got supersonic hearing, but I guess not.
I love it. I love that story.
Oh, it's so classic.
It's a great story. That's classic. Core to the friendship of me, Miles, Parker, Noah. It's amazing. All right.
Classic.
Now that we distracted you with our iceberg story, ladies, I want to move on to our next section. We've gotten deep, we've gotten introspective, we learned tips and tricks. This is fantastic. We got a rapid fire questions for you. So we're going to start with you, Maddie. You can answer this one. You're in New York. What is your favorite spot in New York City for introspection, meditation? Is it on top of a glacier like me, or do you have somewhere else in mind?
It would be nice to find one of those here. I actually, ever since I started coming back into the office during COVID, I started to walk to the office instead of taking the subway. And, the city's loud and chaotic, but I find that walk is super grounding for me. And it's a great way to like ease into work mode. So it's not one set spot, but it's the walk itself, I think would be my answer.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Cool.
I love walking and getting into like a trance state. To be honest, it was very hard for me to do in New York, but in DC, no one lives here, so it's great, and I can do it very easily. So it's beautiful.
I walked home from work today. I almost got hit by a motorcycle, and you know what? That's just like another day in the life of New York City. So I'm like, sometimes it's it's very relaxing. It's calming.
Yeah, you can get too lost in it in New York. You have to be on alert too.
No doubt. All right, next one, Marissa. We kind of touched on it a bit, but you're having a rough day. What is one simple thing that you can do to change the course of the rest of that day?
There comes my tip skills. I knew we would get back to it.
Love it.
So
Love it.
I live and breathe with these tip skills. T is temperature. You'll always see me drinking cold water. Hydrate. I is intense exercise. It doesn't have to be intense. Just walking, getting active. I do jumping jacks in between my clients sometimes. Pace breathing, which is breathing in through our nose for 4 counts, exhaling out for 4 counts, and then progressive muscle relaxation. Look it up. It's a little hard to describe over audio.
But these are all things that we could literally do right now.
Yeah, everyone drink.
It's
everyone
simple.
hydrate. Cheers.
Yeah, I'm out. Oh, man. All right, we got a few more. I got a few more. Okay, Maddie, I got another one. Sorry, Sam. I don't even know if I wrote this one down. But okay. What is one thing that I can change in my environment within my apartment that can help my mental health?
Do you have natural light in your apartment?
I do. Well, I hope, sometimes we pull down the curtain at night, but then we pull it back up.
Yeah.
We do.
So that would probably be one thing if you don't always do, to like make a point to open that and get light in. And I know not every New York apartment gets a whole lot of sunlight. So there are, things you can buy online that kind of, especially in the winter, that like add the effects of natural sunlight, which can be huge for mood. Which again, we don't need to go into all the science of, and I wouldn't speak completely correctly to, but hugely valuable to your energy levels, your mental health, your ability to like sleep regularly and all of that. So getting as much sunlight in there as you can, and maybe a plant you can add to for a little more life in the apartment.
I learned a fun fact about plants. There's a specific plant that you can put into your apartment that actually filters the air or something in your apartment. And I'm like, no way, that's crazy. But I'll have to look it up because I don't know which one it is.
What plant? You gotta let us know.
I feel like all plants do that.
Is it all plants?
I mean, they take out carbon dioxide and they
No,
put
there's
it
a
on.
specific plant, Sam. A specific plant, I think. I don't know.
Pretty sure that's how plants live.
Listen, I ain't no scientist if we're talking science.
We know. We know you're not. All right, look it up. If there's a specific plant, that's fine. But I'm pretty sure that's how all plants with leaves work, but I digress. Okay. Yeah, you didn't write that one down. All right.
No, I did not.
I have a question. You both can answer this. Who do therapists go to for help?
Ooh.
Other therapists.
Okay, that was an easy answer.
Yes.
So do you both also, I assume it has to be someone that you don't know personally, that you've never met. You also went on the journey of finding a therapist, which probably helped you realize what people are looking for when they're trying to find or connect with a therapist as well.
Oh, yeah. I think that, I think all therapists should go to therapy, not to say should, but I do. I think that so much of the work that therapists do is, we're constantly being triggered by other people's stuff. It's like, oh shit, I do that too, right? I'm not a perfect person. I'm a real person with my own stuff that comes up. And so in order for me to be present and show up for my clients, I need to be showing up and processing my own stuff, so that I don't, put it on my clients or my clients don't put it on me. So I think it's just so important.
Well said. I think that makes perfect sense. I think anyone and everyone can benefit from therapy. That's the motto of the day.
Even if I think we talked about this last time. It's like, even if you think nothing is freaking wrong, like any mean, you don't need to like have something wrong. You don't need to be broken to go to therapy. Of course not.
Yeah. I think I told that story when Marissa was on, but like when I had my first therapy session, I went in and I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, I have a podcast all about like elevating your mentality. So I thought it'd be cool if like I went to therapy and thought, she's like, okay, so tell me about yourself. 45 minutes later, I like threw up all my life trauma. And she was like, shit, man, you think you don't have anything to talk about?
Sam, dude, I felt like I was your therapist for like, ever since I met you. But it's fine. Okay. I'll continue to be your therapist, Sam, for free. I'm not going to charge you anytime.
Fair enough.
All right, next one. Last one. And you both have to go because we ask every person who comes on Elevation Nation this one question about rapid fire. And no, it's not your mental motto. We're getting there shortly. What is a book recommendation that you have? Maybe a book that just inspired you lately, or your favorite book of all time?
In the spirit of our conversation on mental health, I will recommend Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which is by Lori Gottlieb, who is a therapist. And it talks about, I think, 3 or 4 of her therapy clients' experiences in therapy with her, as well as, to speak to Marissa's point about therapists going to therapy, her own therapy. And it is super enjoyable to read, and it gives so much insight into what therapy can be like. And then also a little bit of insight to therapy from the lens of a therapist, which I think a lot of people are curious about. So if you haven't been to therapy and you're curious about it, I think it's a really interesting read to learn a little bit more. And it's just great.
Love it. What about you, Marissa? I know you read.
Heck yeah. My favorite book is It's Not Always Depression. I was had maybe I shocked one in my head. It's Not Always Depression by Hillary Jacobs Hendel. It is based off of the theory that I operate from. It talks a lot about defenses. I know we hit on that, and it has different exercises that you can do to ground yourself, and it is just like the bread and butter of my work. I absolutely love it and couldn't recommend it more.
Amazing. You know what's funny? Sam and
have a book club.
I don't know if, Sam, you feel this way, but we've gotten a lot of book recommendations. Sam and I read a lot. I've read a lot of like the self-help books, and I feel like they all just blend together. I feel like I need to read one of your books that you guys recommend. It's a little bit step up, like written by an actual psychiatrist or psychologist or psychotherapist or whatever. It's just funny. Like all the self-help books, they kind of all blend. But I'm not reading a self-help book right now. I'm actually reading a book about the body. It's really interesting. Learning a lot.
Cool.
I'm reading Atomic Habits right now. Have you read that one?
Classic, of course.
Yeah.
Read that one in like a week.
So far, so good.
So good. Yeah. And you got to follow his newsletter. His newsletter is great. Comes once every Thursday. It's really quick. It's 3 thoughts by him, 2 thoughts by other people, and 1 question. Simple as that. But it's like every week I'm like, okay, he's got something to say.
Okay. All right. I'll subscribe.
All right, Sammy, the last part of our conversation.
Drum roll. Favorite part. It's called your mental motto, right? A phrase that you live your life by. We've done almost hundreds of these now, I think, at this point, and none of them have been the same. So, Elevation Nation, Parker and myself are really excited to hear both of your mental mottos. So, Maddie, why don't you start us off?
Sure. My mental motto, I kind of referenced part of it earlier, is multiple truths. And by that, I mean that more than one thing can be true at once. So this and that can be true. And my friends all know that I always correct their buts with ands, and my clients know that I do the same. But basically, so often we say, I really like this, and it totally takes away from whatever that usually positive first thought was and negates it with whatever might be hard or stressful. So if we simply just replace but with and, we can acknowledge that both are just as true. One doesn't make the other any less true. And I think it's a super helpful, very easy to introduce mindset shift that has really big consequences.
I love that. I think that is awesome. I got feedback once that, like, if you're having a conversation with, someone who you work with, just use and instead of but, and it changes the entire conversation so much. I love it. All right, Marissa, I know you're excited. Is it the same one? Did we ask you on the first time you came?
I was trying to think.
I don't even remember. I don't think we did.
Well, I'm going to say, I'll say one.
Let's hear it.
Someone can go back
Hell
and see
yeah.
if I'm staying true. But mine is just show up. I feel like recently, as we've been talking about, there's so much anxiety and like harshness in the world, and it definitely makes me overthink. And sometimes you just have to like show up, right? And show up as your authentic self rather than overthinking or rather than going to worst case scenario. I just try to like be blank, breathe, and just show up as I am, and that's enough. And that's it.
Love it.
It's very similar to Parker's.
Yeah? What's yours, Parker?
I think so. Just like it's very simple. It's very
mine is proud to be. As simple as
Cool.
that. Yeah.
I love it.
Sounds a little bit like Be You.
exactly.
Oh, a little
Be You
bit.
Psychotherapy?
Be You Psychotherapy. Proud to be me. Proud to be you. Psychotherapy.
There you
I
go.
considered
Parker's
that
writing
for my
taglines.
motto, but I thought it was a little too cheesy.
That's fair. Ours is not like elevate yourself, although it should be. They're fun. I think like what's cool about a mental motto is you get like a little taste inside everyone's brain and how they were raised in some of their core values that they have. So I always find it interesting to hear what people really stress in their everyday lives. So I appreciate you both opening up and sharing those with us. I can't believe we've already been talking for an hour because I feel like we could do this for another few hours. And that's the beauty, Elevation Nation, of therapy. So if you're interested in therapy at all, or specifically the two wonderful therapists that we had on our show today, we will be linking to their practice, to their personal pages, to Be You Psychotherapy, so you can learn a little bit more about them. But I think overall, right, one of the things that I want to stress is Elevation Nation, if you're out there, you're not going through it alone. And everyone is going through something. Even though you see these perceived lives of influencers and your friends that seems perfect, everyone is going through something, and that's okay. If you have someone to talk to about it, that's the first step. If you're able to process your emotions and be introspective, that's another step. If you need anything, everyone knows that you can reach out to Parker and myself. We are definitely not therapists, but we can lend an ear and get you to talk to the right people.
We'll elevate you. I can do that.
God, you're so cheesy. Yes, we can elevate you.
At some point, you got to own it, right?
No, it's fair. I get it. Marissa, Maddie, this was special. I think it's always nice when we can get super introspective. I tried to keep my therapy talk to a minimum since I'm not paying your guys' bill tonight. But perhaps next time. We did this as friends, but I think it's amazing to hear how you both are doing, how you're helping other young people conquer the real world and go through some of the challenges that they are facing. And, you know, it's important for Elevation Nation to know that mental health is not something to be scared of, but it's something that all of us have and work on, just like going to the gym. We work on our physical health. We need to work on our mental health as well.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, this was so fun. Thank you guys for having us on. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Me too. Thank you. This was great.
Thank you
Until
guys
next
so
week,
much.
Elevation Nation.
Bye.
Peace. Good job, guys. That was great.